Planning an event that's just around the corner? PC NameTag is here for planners with their exclusive event badge, plus other meeting supplies, including promotional products. Count on customized services that include consultation, printing and assembly, then delivery of your imprinted products to your next event. PC NameTag saves time and helps you present an extraordinary event, one that leads to memorable and meaningful connections. Call 888-698-5500 or visit PCNameTag.com today.
Are you a follower? Okay, so we're gonna call the Adler.
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Editor-in-Chief Beth Kormanik.
Hi, David.
Hey, Beth, here we are, another GatherGeeks.
Yes, and today we're going to hear from Tony Lorenz, who is CEO of AlliedPRA, a destination management company. If you don't know what that is, we are going to clear that up for you today and learn a little bit more about this segment of the events industry. So currently, the Chicago-based company has 30 locations across North America, but that number may soon go up because it's on a buying spree from Nashville to New York, among other markets. And Tony's going to talk about the strategy, among other things that you get into today. So, David, before we get into it, would you define destination management company or D.M.C. as they're known for listeners who may not be familiar with the concept?
Do you know what's so funny? Whenever I mention the word D.M.C. to people, either they actually know exactly what it is or they've never heard of it. And it's kind of a stepchild business in the industry that people don't realize is a bit of a secret sauce, because they actually take a lot of the stress off of an organizer's head and allow them to focus on the things that they do best, while the destination management company focuses on things like getting the people there and organizing the events in association with the other events that are going on, and really making it so it's like a complete concierge service for both the attendees and the organizer.
Right, they serve corporate, association, and incentive groups, and maybe arranging a company's transportation or arranging offsite activities and designing the big opening or closing dinner. They do this in destinations all over the world, and they're experts in that market. That's really the service that they're selling.
They're the go-to people when you need to go to a certain area and you want to find the expert.
Right. So Tony is going to talk more about AlliedPRA's business model and some challenges the sector faces as a whole and more. Let's take a listen.
So, Tony, welcome to GatherGeeks. We've known each other for many years, and you have been a beacon of the future. And in this new role, you are really doing some exciting things with consolidating the destination management business. And I wanted to get your sort of sense of why you're doing that. Why do you think this is such an attractive place to be in the industry?
Well, as you know, I've spent a lot of years in the business event space, and I've always appreciated the work of this particular sector of the space. I think it's critically important. Events don't happen well without the good work of destination management companies like ours and others executing well, and it is pretty important. That said, I don't think it's quite the level of attention or respect it deserves for the importance it is placed on these events and on the services that we deliver to events. So one way by which for us that we can as a sector and as AlliedPRA get after that is just to bring a little bit of scale to it. And
well, first go into, the idea is that like when I got into this business many years ago, I was in marketing for years and understood events for years and head of corporate communications for major companies. I never even heard of a destination management company.
Right.
And the kind of thing that people don't realize how important it could be if they knew about it. Especially the agency and marketing world, with everything morphing together, the idea of an agency that's executing an amazing event or an organization, that fact that they may not even know what a destination management company is kind of criminal, because it could help them do their job so much better.
Exactly.
Do you agree with that? I'm asking you to agree with that or not agree with that?
I completely agree.
Okay.
People that are in the space don't know what destination management companies do.
Right.
Forget about outside of the space.
Okay, so what do they do?
Really caught on.
Explain, we what's your elevator pitch?
We provide expertise that is specific to the destinations that we serve around the category of business events. So events that we produce, transportation that we coordinate, activities and tours that we manage for a number of different clients, all of which are important and all of which need some level of destination-specific expertise to ensure they go well. That's what we're up to. And it's decidedly different than, you know me from my previous life, and building out big content in general sessions and meeting planning is different. So there's different parts and pieces to the ecosystem of events that we decidedly are not in today, and yet in the category of the things that need to be done by individuals and organizations that are attuned to and knowledgeable about the destination in which that event takes place. That's where we live.
You know, we did a survey and we figured out that 70% of planners plan events outside the market that they're in, which means that the level of insecurity about decision making means they need a sort of a feet on the street type of thing, which is hard to find.
Right. There's a lot of companies out there in this sector. We are fortunate to enjoy a leadership position from a market share standpoint, which even in our position is only 5% of the market, if that, 5 or 6%. So that tells you how highly fragmented the space is of D.M.C., if you will. So with that fragmentation comes lack of voice and really not an ability for the sector as a sector to put itself in a position of relative importance to the rest of the ecosystem of events. So that's one of the challenges, and we're endeavoring to get after it.
Why do you think that PRA? I mean, you got a private equity behind you. You've got like this whole group of people that are making a big bet. Why do they think PRA is the platform?
Well, I would think that what they tell me is that they love our strategy. They love the space. They know face-to-face. First of all, they know face-to-face is not going to go away. Business events, in spite of all the digital platforms out there that are growing by the minute, the need for individuals to get together face-to-face is undeniably never going to go away. So that's part one. It's not like newspaper or other mediums that have gone away because it's just not that important, not that necessary. Face-to-face is critically important, and the things that we do are equally important. The difference between where we are and where we want to be is that the fragmentation of the sector does not allow for to really transform best practices and do things that make this sector in which we reside head and shoulders along with the other sectors, content agencies, et cetera, that are known and are doing great work. Those are other parts of the ecosystem of events that seem to have gotten a little bit better place in the mindset of the stakeholders and corporations especially, and yet we have not. So we've got this undeniable importance, and yet we're not where we need to be, and scale is a
You're doing what, if I'm correct, you are attempting a roll-up of these
Correct.
services and aggregating them so that you can win by scale, and because there's so many details and so labor intensive that by going into a market, and tell us how big you are now and how big you want to be.
Well, we've got 30 locations now. We're just over $150 million in revenue. We have a very significant target that's markedly higher than that over the next few years, as all PE-backed firms have. So we do intend to grow out through a number of different pillars, be it acquisitions in our core sector. We have a fantastic global sales team, so we're bringing more resources into our global sales organization because we do know that large corporations especially, they like to buy across locations. And yet, if we don't own those locations, which for the most part we own all of our locations now, with a few exceptions of some franchisees that we still have strong relationships with in some select markets, we do own our business, as opposed to consortiums where there's a number of different business owners across a lot of different locations. This is all owned by AlliedPRA for the most part.
And are you in you're in the core markets, and your footprint is North America? Is it global? What's your geographical footprint?
We're gonna stay in North America for now.
Mm-hmm.
We rely on and enjoy partners around the world, but we're North American centric. Half the global spend in business events is right here. And so there's so much to do, so much opportunity right here in North America that we're going to stay here and certainly work with partners around the world, but we don't intend to own assets around the world. I think the business did that at one time long ago and it didn't work out so well. So we're not going to do that.
You're going to do that, but you are acquiring lots of individual operators.
We are. Yeah, we are. We have. There's markets in which we are in or are not in. A recent example in Destination Nashville, we acquired that business this past week, and that is a market that we clearly needed to be in. And so we acquired the market leader in that particular market to be important and relevant in the Nashville market.
Where did you say? What was the market? I didn't hear that market.
Nashville.
Nashville. And you just bought New York?
Yeah, Briggs was in the fall.
Yeah,
a phenomenal group of people. You know them.
Oh, yeah.
We had a presence in New York, but it wasn't very significant. So we said, how can we possibly have this system and this sector leadership position and not have a critical, important business in New York? So along came Briggs, and we were fortunate to bring that into the fold. That is just a fantastic organization.
Yeah, no,
they're clearly
great.
In the New York market. So we now have them. We weren't in the Rockies at all a year ago plus, and then we acquired D.M.C., which is the market leader in the Rockies for the most part. So we now have a strong presence in the Rockies, and then other markets coming over the near to midterm.
And how do you compare to the other types of businesses like the Helms Briscoes of the world, and maybe explain what kind of business that is versus what you guys do?
Mm-hmm. So Helms Briscoe is in a different place than we are. As an example, and there's others, but Conference Direct, Helms Briscoe, et cetera.
Right.
They are really there to bring the hotel relationship together with a brand, a client, and to be an association or corporation. And we don't work there. We will work with Helms Briscoe or with Conference Direct or with Merritt and BI and others to bring those destination specific services that we deliver. We work with clients either direct or through those organizations to make these events happen. But we don't get involved in the hotel contracting, which is the primary component of what they do.
But but wouldn't a local organization like Briggs would get involved in contracting in their market, though, right? Or no?
Very, very, very little.
Very little. So they're going through the third party in many cases.
Yeah, we're not big buyers of hotels like Briggs or like Conference Direct and others.
So where is from a business perspective, where is the bread and butter of what a destination management? How do they earn their fees or their commissions or whatever it is? What is the driver of the business?
Well, we don't live off commissions. That's number one.
Okay.
So we don't have that. We basically, it's not unlike any professional services business. You put out solutions that have margins in them, and the big buckets are events that we will put forth for our clients, transportation solutions, moving 20, 30, 40,000 people around the city during a given trade show or convention, or activities of all sorts that we are delivering for our clients that are attached to typically larger events, be it sales meetings, launches, et cetera. Give
our listeners sort of a sense of what kind of those activities. When I learned what the activities are, it's very interesting that people don't even think about them when they are associated with events like tours and associations, things involved for spouses. What are some of the other sort of big pieces of that destination puzzle, management puzzle?
Of the activities?
Yeah, what are the things that you're selling?
And so I'll stay with New York since you're a New York native. You've got on Times Square, Good Morning America. You're an interesting venue, obviously. So we will do backstage tours of Good Morning America, give them a peek into how that show is produced. There's ways by which we can give these attendees of these activities experiences they otherwise could not get on their own. That's the key, is to give them differentiating experiences that are just irreplaceable. So in that case, given the relationships that in that case Briggs has, we pull together activities for visitors of New York that are just undeniably not attainable otherwise. So that delivers strong, curated experiences that attendees in today's market are really looking for. So the more interesting those experiences are, and the more untouchable they are to the general public, the more valuable they become.
Yeah,
if they're done well.
I don't think that people realize the extent. Whenever I've dealt with Briggs, for example, you'd go to a show with a group, and then there would be an amazing talk by one of the actors afterwards in the theater.
Exactly.
And those things are, yes, you can arrange them, but those are complex to create, on a scalable basis. And so they know who to call quickly and make this stuff happen.
Yeah. They and all of our other locations have, in different, name the city, different ways by which we bring those unique experiences together.
Yeah, they're connected in ways that people don't realize. That's why a lot of times when an agency that gets a big account for an experiential thing, they don't realize the value that they should be pairing with a destination management company in general. Because
they do.
But more and more.
Do.
Yeah, but they need to know it.
Many do.
Yep. But is that a core new audience for you, or what are the places that you want to be that should be appreciative of destination management services?
Well, most of our revenue today is coming from corporations directly,
right.
And a good chunk of it also comes from respected third parties that we work with. We referenced a couple earlier, and Merits and a lot of others that are just wonderful long-term, multi-decade partners. We feel as though that as we polish our craft and our go-to-market strategy gets that much stronger, which it will over time, then corporations will increasingly look to us for the solutions they need. And then we would bring in the partners that we work with now for the benefit of hotel contracting and all the different things that we don't do, staying to our knitting, if you will, of delivering unique experiences that move hearts, minds, and businesses forward. That's our core purpose as a business, and that's what we do. And then there are things around that we don't do that we look to our partners to deliver with us.
But what are some of the use cases? Like I know that when a corporation has a big board meeting or a corporate meeting, they make use of a destination management company to fill in all the holes around that event too.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'll stay with New York. We had a very significant global law firm brought 700 people into New York a week or so ago, and we did a lot of different things. Museum of Modern Art. There was a big event there. We took them through that tour I referenced earlier. Different events on Broadway. There was just a ton of different things that happened for both the partners and their guests to affect a good 3 or 4 day experience in New York. And it's important. I mean, you two get together not every year, every other year or so, depending. And when you pull all that resource together, these partners and their guests and employees, et cetera, you want to create experience that is so powerful that the business changes favorably as a result of that experience.
Absolutely.
That's when we know we've done our job.
Absolutely.
When businesses get better by virtue of what we have just done with them.
The little secret weapon that a lot of event agencies, destination management companies do is they use BizBash to get a lot of ideas to help them peek over the fence to see what other people are doing. So we kind of work hand in hand. So we love when we're being researched by your types of companies because it has massive impact.
I just saw an email from you this morning around the Museum of Science and History here in Chicago.
Yeah.
That was spot on as to the value of that particular venue for a variety of different types of events. And there's no question.
Well,
we are appreciative of the work of BizBash.
Well, the interesting thing about what's going on in the world today, that venues and gatherings are the new town squares in the world. And the impact that we have when we curate them properly has much bigger impact than anything else. And I just actually wrote an article on how the new race for power is convening power among big corporations, that they want to show that they're convening people in big numbers and also delivering purpose in those convening arrangements. And
there's no question about it.
Yep.
The craft of what we do, I've been in this industry for almost 30 years now. The craft of what we do, I'm as bullish on business events and face-to-face as I've ever been, and as you know, I've always been.
Right.
This is our moment, and I think it's coming And I had this discussion yesterday with someone over in a company named Outsell. And face-to-face events, as I said, are necessary. But the more and more the individuals are out there digitally on social media platforms and remote workforces, et cetera, the more favorable pressure it creates on the need to get together.
Yep.
That's just undeniable. And so as digital goes north, which it will continue to go north, so goes the pressure favorably to bring people together, because the DNA just calls for it. That's all there is to it.
It also
never goes away.
The other interesting thing that I've one of my favorite new books, I don't know if you've read it yet, is *Sapiens*, which is kind of the history of the world, and he talks, and it's interesting going back to hunter-gatherer days to today and how the world has really changed. But he talks about experience. But the interesting thing about experience is that it has to get better every time, or it's no longer really an experience. So the bar gets raised. So you can't really do the same thing all the time. And that's the dynamism of what we do, and that's kind of the art form of what we do, and why the value of having people that can constantly be curious about the next experience are out there looking.
And right there is where the value of destination-specific expertise lies. Because what goes on in New York this year is markedly different, and the opportunities this year are markedly different than they were a year ago or 18 months ago or 6 months ago.
Totally
Same
agree.
goes for Chicago, San Francisco, LA, et cetera. The markets are changing. They need to be fresh. The market expectation, the audience expectation is that they are new and fresh and interesting. And you can't do that by pulling ideas off the shelf from a year or two ago. It just doesn't work anymore.
Right. Even the experience of the event. I just got off a podcast with DJ Saul, who is an IoT expert. And we were talking about how the selfie thing kind of peaked, and now we're on to a different thing. The next big rise is in sound activations, and it's just we've got to be current in order to present experiences that make sense. And what I liked about what was interesting, to go back to Briggs, and I'm sure you saw the same value I saw. If you go into their way of doing things, there is almost an algorithm for everything that they do, and a way they do it. And everyone thinks it's so easy to move people from one place to the next, but it is a process, just like the most sophisticated programming on a website. I say that we're in the business of programming human interaction, and these guys have really programmed it in such incredible ways. That so diligent on every little aspect, and they change it based on what works and what doesn't work. And that's what impressed me about how these really smart destination management companies work. They really got it down. And I guess by aggregating, you're getting the best of all worlds. We are. So we're fortunate with Briggs and Destination Nashville and D.M.C.s and others coming, that we're not buying any fixer-uppers. These are all amazing companies in and of their own right. And yet we know there's best practices both within AlliedPRA, but even more importantly, within these organizations we're acquiring, and sharing those best practices across the full system. So we get into a 1 + 1 = hopefully 4 or 6 scenario, because there are very strong best practices here in the core business of AlliedPRA, and there are also very strong practices in the acquired companies. And to the extent that we, with very selfless eyes, say, you know what? Nashville's got a much better approach to X than we do. Mm-hmm. Or Nashville says, I love the way that AlliedPRA tracks its client activity. Let's bring that into the business. That is the magic. And that comes from a point of humility. We have to understand that we are not amazing at every single thing we do. Just because we acquired a company doesn't mean we're an expert in all of it. They have best practices. So we have that humility in the way we are going after the integration of these businesses purposely and over time. And then 2, there's a certain amount of intensity. Change is hard, but if you find ways by which to change your business favorably, with purpose and with some level of intensity, good things happen. And then finally, we absolutely are in a mindset. There's a lot of entrepreneurship in and around this business. And so with entrepreneurship comes ownership, and with ownership comes ownership of outcomes. So whether it's good or not so good,
We have a very instilled belief that we own our outcomes as individuals, as teams, as a business, et cetera. And that plays quite well into our shareholder group, of which I'm a member, but primarily our private equity firm. They want to see that ownership mindset, as do I, as CEO, see the ownership mindset in our collective team, and that's critically important as well.
Well, it sounds also like you must be in a change management role right now in terms of what do you physically do when you onboard a new company? Is there sort of a process that you have how you learn from the old and bring in the new without hurting egos and things?
Yeah, there's a big process. I won't get into it specifically here, but there's a very purposeful process we take these acquired companies through. We're careful. We are jewels, and we have to realize that in the case of, as an example, Nashville this week, I think there's 32 people down there, and this decision was made for them. It's not like they all decided to sell the business to AlliedPRA. Ron DeMarco, as an owner, sold it, and then there's a team left to become part of our broader system. So we need to honor the fact that, first, this decision was not necessarily theirs, and yet we know, as does Rhonda knows, as does the management team know, that this is a great opportunity for them. So we have to communicate what we're up to as a business, as a core business to AlliedPRA. One, be hypersensitive to the transition through the typical areas of an integration. And three, embrace best practices of that business. In the case of this one we're talking about now, Nashville, most definitely has. And then they see, as I saw my previous gig with Freeman and Proactive, when I sold my business to Freeman, I still see, just being around, I see practices of Proactive still resonant over at Freeman today. This little company, it was 55 employees to a 7,000 person event. You see the DNA of that smaller business making its way into the bigger business, Freeman, and we'll do that same thing here at AlliedPRA.
Well, I think smart acquirers are taking the best of what they get and integrating it in smart ways, because you really have to kind of see what they're doing right first before you make changes.
Right. And our process to even get to a place where we're acquiring the business is pretty extensive. So there's plenty of businesses that we've started to look at and then didn't acquire because we have a pace, and we again, as I said earlier, we don't need to try to fix any businesses. We're a strong business. We want to acquire other strong businesses, create the best of scenario across the full system, and not spend a tremendous amount of energy on businesses that aren't strong to begin with.
For people that own event businesses today, there has not really been an exit strategy for most. It looks as though it's starting to happen in some places. Catering companies are being bought up, and you guys are doing it in the destination management space. You're seeing some agencies have been aggregating for years, but it's been and that's been morphing into different things. But venues and things like that are just starting to experience that, and we are seeing that the idea of best practices and scalability are becoming more important than ever.
Well, I think that it is happening, and I think that if we were to say to ourselves, let's just be a bigger version of our current self, that would be underwhelming. We want to, of course, grow through acquisition, but we want to grow and then evolve as well. And if we can evolve through, again, the sharing of what the best is out there, it comes at Briggs and Destination Nashville and DSC and others on deck. They do some amazing things.
Yep.
And those practices are highly transferable.
Yep.
And it would be hard for us as AlliedPRA to do that organically all on our own without the infusion, if you will, of those best practices out of those acquired companies. So yes, when we buy a business, we're buying a business that makes money and there's people and those sorts of things. But there's also intrinsic value just by virtue of taking a best practice and expanding it across the full system of AlliedPRA. And there's a lot of work to do there. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we're good to go and that's all done. There's definitely work to do.
Right.
But we're definitely after it as well. No question.
The interesting, as we talked on the business side of it, I hope there's someone interested in the business side of this because it's so interesting. And it looks as though the number one thing I think in business is how do we raise the multiples of value of these businesses? And because, private equity companies buying it at one multiple, they want to sell it at a higher multiple. You're also seeing that happen with PSAV buying companies like Hargrove, and Freeman like being a huge powerhouse buying lots of things, and GES. And Informa buying up all the trade shows around the world, and the catering companies that are being bought up by various groups, and Sodexo and Compass and all those people. It is a different world than when we started in this world.
No question. Well, I think it's made its way into. It's visible. For whatever reason, it's much more visible now than it was back in the day. And it's a big industry, too. I'll give credit to, I'm a board member at Meetings New Business, and that study done years ago and now recently polished. It's a $330 billion industry here in the U.S. alone. There's no private equity firm who's not going to pay attention to that.
But the thing is, though, that our job, I think, as managers of these businesses, to figure out how the multiples, it becomes more valuable. Like, how do you get, technology multiples when these companies are bought and sold? And that's hard.
Well, tech multiples are. My CFO here was a CFO at Fieldglass, sold to SAP, and 10x on revenue. Those we're not going to be seeing that anytime soon in this sector, but there's definitely upside opportunity for our business to be more valuable on a multiple basis than it was just by virtue of scale alone. Big brands like to work with bigger companies because they feel the safety and security of doing so, which is much different than working with a standalone business in a given city. That doesn't translate as safely as does working with a well-financed, significant private equity-backed company that is not going anywhere.
Right. So let's go back to like the original entrepreneur. Many of these companies that you're buying up were original entrepreneurs that have been passed on or whatever. Is there room for the individual entrepreneur anywhere to start these businesses up? Or is it now kind of you need to be part of a bigger group?
Well, it depends on the sector. I think there's, like I'll stay with our own sector here.
Destination
you want to
management.
launch stay with that. There's definitely room. Maybe because I'm 55 years old and I wouldn't dream of doing it right now. But there's definitely room for people to launch businesses, no question about it. So my answer is yes, there's room. My focus every day of my life is on taking the existing value that's in our sector and, again, crafting it into something that's more valuable than it would be all by itself.
Right.
And that's, I'm thinking about that a lot these days. So
how can the person that you're hiring at Briggs or something feel like they're, like we said, people want to feel like they have an ownership stake.
Right.
How do you get that feeling so they're entrepreneurs?
That's a great question. So first of all, we maintain P&L responsibility on these local offices. I think that's important. They may not own a P&L or a balance sheet, but they certainly should feel like they own it, and they should be incented to derive both top and bottom line. That's part one. Part two, and beyond, this goes beyond individual ownership, is being in an environment where careers can be made much stronger just because they're in that system environment. By that I mean, as an example, if you're an employee in an Arizona office of ours and a spouse moves to New York, well, if you're in an independent company in Arizona, you're starting all over. Whereas if you're a great employee in Arizona and you have to move to New York for personal reasons, we're going to give you a job in New York. That's going to happen. So there's ways by which to stay within a given organization by virtue of the span of locations we have. And then also, we also know that if you don't move, the chances of you being in a business like this forever are pretty minute. So we have a responsibility for your chapter, however long it may be, 2 or 3 or 5 or 9 or however many years. And so if we stay focused on doing the best we possibly can as an employer to be strong as an employer for you as a team member, then we're starting to get our job done. But if we're looking at you as someone who we really want you to be around for 20 years, well, that's just not going to happen. It's likely not going to happen. Maybe a few, but likely not. If we just take that reality and say, okay, we are being gifted with a chapter in your career. Well, our job is to make the very most of it that we possibly can. And at the same time, we have responsibility to our business to make money and do those things that keep us going. But nonetheless, we have to keep our eye on the fact that we need to really get an A in giving you a great career chapter. And that is something that we have a pretty significant ability to deliver because of the scale and resources and things that are going on here.
Well, it's interesting. What people don't realize, well, maybe they do, I don't know, about this industry is that we're like we have a global language. I mean, it's like music in a sense, that people are doing events around the world, and they're all kind of not exactly the same, but humans are humans, and they want to connect. And that's what the beauty of this industry.
It's an amazing industry. It's magical in some respects. And you're right. It's a universal language. Face-to-face is a universal language that is undeniable.
It's incredible. I wanted to end this on, like, how are you seeing technology as a way to scale the business, create efficiencies? Like, what's in your lab right now? I mean, how much augmented reality is it a factor, or is AI something that you think will help your business? Are you looking in that direction?
Yeah, of course we are, and we have and will continue to employ it where it makes sense. I'll stay with, however, the more internal components of technology, just because we are assembling a lot of companies and acquiring a lot of companies, and they each are on their own ways by which they do things. Remarkably, it's not that different from business to business to business, but we are building out a robust platform as part of our strategy to really all sing from the same song sheet. So when that individual from Arizona moves to New York, they don't feel the difference in the way events are produced, if you will, off the technology platform that we build out over the course of the whole system. So that's a big effort. We've spent a lot of dollars, and we'll continue to spend more as we build out our platform. And then at that point, we can squeeze a lot of efficiencies out of the system, which are currently in place all over the D.M.C. sector. I don't care who you are. It's highly inefficient, and we'll work to get some of that out of the system so we can keep our offices focused on doing what they want to do, not what they have to do. And it takes technology to get that done.
So I want to end this on, it's interesting that I found that everybody that loves our business, the event industry, have been doing that for years, whether they knew it or not, even from high school and with their family events and things like that. What got you into the experience business or the event business in your early days? What was the light bulb that went off that made you say, this is a great business?
It goes back. I got to tell you, in high school.
Go ahead.
Back in high school, my three friends of mine, we had this little business in high school called JARM Productions. For those of you in Chicago, JAM. Well, Jimmy, Anthony, Ricky, and Mike had a little business, and we put together events for 200-300 people before I was out of high school. Jeez. And it just kept on going. I was a CPA in a big 8 firm. That was clearly a great chapter, but not one I wanted to exercise for more than 4 or 5 years. And I fell into it. I fell into it through a friend's company, and I never looked back. I absolutely love what events do to, and as I said, move hearts, minds, and businesses forward. It's just amazing. It's addictive, and you know that.
When you were in high school, what was the first thing that you learned that you knew that was going to drive everything else in the future for you in terms of how events work? I mean, was there something that you created a rule, or so no one showed up at the first event, so you did X? What was sort of the thing that you went through to figure out what you learned early on?
There had to be. Oh man, that's going way back. There was some events that arguably we probably shouldn't have been running. We were anyway, and we had to get the word out, and we did. We made sure that from an event marketing, we didn't even know the term at that point, but we marketed that event, and what we thought was going to be 100 people turned into 300 or 400 people somewhere, and it's because we did a good job marketing.
What was that marketing in high school looking like? What did that look like before?
It was a lot of paper.
A lot of people putting up posters?
Again, there was no social media.
Yeah.
My social media was inside of a cupboard with a bunch of names on it and phone numbers. It was just different, but we word of mouth. That's good old-fashioned word of mouth way back then. Now it's, of course, all driven by social media, but, we got it done. And it was we had ambassadors that were saying, you really need to come. It's going to be a lot of fun. And these are personal events. I mean, business events are a whole different thing.
Yeah,
but
not really.
Yeah, in some respects. I've never been in the personal event business ever. It's always been B2B.
It's always the same thing.
You have to put an environment in place where people want to be there, and then that energy of those individuals at that event is a good chunk of the equation.
Yep. So, Tony, how can people get in touch with you? Send you their resume, your company that they want to. Okay.
You can send me through LinkedIn. Is probably the best way to do it. Okay. You can look me up there and/or Tony.Lorenz at AlliedPRA.
Say that again slowly.
Tony.Lorenz.
Okay.
At AlliedPRA.com.
Great. Thank you so much. This has been really interesting. I hope we didn't get too off on the business side of this, but it's always interesting to me.
No, it's fun.
Thanks, Tony.
David, AlliedPRA itself was acquired by private equity, CI Capital Partners, in 2017. So what do you think is the future for D.M.C.s?
I think that it's interesting that the private equity people are recognizing the fact that this is a legitimate global industry and that the event language is a universal language, and that to me is what it says. And when I was in the 90s, I was involved in the roll up of Primedia, which was rolling up media companies. Because they were able to sort of get a lot of efficiencies based on back end and systems, and I think that's what they're really are trying to do, is to see how they can scale and make these things really more profitable, recognizing that this is a great service. Mm-hmm.
And AlliedPRA is growing, and they're bringing scale to the field. I think that's the phrase that Tony used.
Yep.
What do you think the scale is going to mean for clients? Is this prices are going to go up or down, or is there going to be better recognition or respect in the industry?
I think better recognition, respect, and better data so that they can make better buying decisions on every aspect of the industry. It's just getting more efficient so that you know what to do, especially in the world of AI that's coming. The data becomes more important than ever to understand the behaviors of people at events, to understand the behaviors of an individual guest. I love the fact that when you go to a great hotel now, they know exactly everything about you, and they service you in a first-class way. And someone doesn't have to remember, oh my God, David Adler liked the New York Times in the morning. So it's all going to be all morphed together into this great service component, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, data can definitely inform that. And then on the other side of it, they have to have, the D.M.C.s themselves have to have these personal relationships. They really have to know their market.
Well, isn't the world now a combination of both high touch and sort of the techniques and processes that makes it more efficient?
Right. So you know who to call when you want that backstage tour of your favorite morning show. Right?
Oh, yeah. They know how to do that.
Exactly.
Great. So what's going on at BizBash?
Well, I wanted to take this opportunity to give the dates for our live events this year, because we've settled all the dates for our shows in South Florida, which is May 16th, Los Angeles on July 18th, and New York on October 26th. So we are busy, very busy right now, programming these events with insightful speakers and getting the most innovative and exciting vendors on our exhibit hall floor, and just putting together so much learning and inspiration for the attendees of BizBash Live. So mark your calendars and bookmark bizbash.com/events. We've already opened the registration for Florida on May 16th, as I said, and we'll see everyone there.
Yeah, and what I like about our events, any events, especially these, is that you're investing in yourself when you come. You come and you leave with all this, not only inspiration, but knowledge that you can share the minute you get back to your office. And we all have to be open to things. We're so busy drinking from a fire hose. Spending the day investing in yourself in a profession that you love is the best gift you can give yourself.
Great.
Thanks. Well, until next time.
Gather on, David.
Gather on.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter at GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on. This episode is sponsored in part by PC Name Tag. When's the big event? PC NameTag is here for planners with their exclusive event badge, plus other meeting supplies, including promotional products. Count on customized services that save time while helping you present an extraordinary event, one that leads to memorable and meaningful connections. Call 888-698-5500 or visit PCNameTag.com today. This episode is also sponsored by Event Leadership Institute. Invest in yourself and your staff with self-paced online event education designed to fit into your busy schedule. Subscribe to the Event Leadership Institute for only $25 per month and gain access to an extensive on-demand video library of classes, as well as interviews with industry leaders. Best of all, you can watch classes in small pieces or all at once. For more information, visit eventleadershipinstitute.com.